Well, thank you all so much for coming. My name's Mike Levin. I have the great honor to represent this community in the United States House of Representatives. And today we were supposed to start down in San Diego and make our way all the way up to Los Angeles and take rail from one end of the Low Sand Rail Corridor to the other. And that was the plan until about 4:30 or 5 o'clock yesterday when we had this landslide at the Mariposa Bridge behind us. And what we wanted to do, we still were able to have an event over in Oceanside and talk about some of the investments we're making in this rail corridor. But we wanted to come and see for ourselves and see exactly what was happening here. I want to thank all of our state and local partners. You're going to be hearing from them. They have just been tremendous in ensuring the long-term viability of this corridor. But let me tell you, this is really, really important for so many reasons. The rail corridor connecting LA and San Diego is the second busiest intercity passenger rail corridor in the United States. Roughly 8 million people per year commute, so it's so critically important for all those passengers and other commuters that this corridor remain open. It's also of great significance to our regional economy. Every year, about $1 billion with a B in commercial travel is facilitated by the corridor. So you can just do the math. If it closes down for a month or 2 months, we could be talking about literally hundreds of millions of dollars in economic impact to our region. And also, it's critically important for our coastal economy. About 140,000 jobs and roughly $7 billion a year related to our coastal economy. Think of all the tourism for all the different businesses up and down our beautiful coastline. So grateful to live and serve in this community, but also mindful of the challenges we face. So, a few years ago when I first took office, 2019, there were a lot of projects that unfortunately were going nowhere with regard to this corridor. You know, for example, the Army Corps of Engineers had completed geotechnical analysis with regard to the need for sand here in San Clemente all the way back in 2010. And very little had happened between 2010 and 2019 actually making sure we got sand here on the beach. The same is true for the Army Corps project going on down in Encinitas and Solana Beach, trying to get sand there as well. The same is true for much needed investments in a new bridge down in Del Mar. And the list goes on and on. So we, from day one in 2019, established a new relationship and built one of trust and confidence with the Army Corps of Engineers and with our different transportation partners, whether it's OCTA here in Orange County or North County Transit District or Sandag down in San Diego County. The Low Sand Rail Corridor also has a regional agency that you'll be hearing from Supervisor Foley is committed to finding long-term solutions to some of the challenges that we face. Earlier today, I was very proud to be down in Oceanside, and we announced two major milestones when as it pertains to the long-term stability of this corridor. We really need three things, by the way. We need sand on our beaches, we need stability and stabilization projects, and we need stakeholder engagement, and we're moving aggressively on all three. With regard to sand, as I said, we've secured $30 million through the bipartisan infrastructure law for about 1.1 million cubic yards of sand down in Encinitas and Solana Beach, and another $9.3 million for sand here in San Clemente. Actually, just recently we did an event on this. You can see the Army Corps signs down there, and it's critically important that the Army Corps moves as quickly as possible to find suitable sand to put on these beaches here between T Street and Linda Lane. That'll help this entire area with a littoral cell that'll include this entire area where this landslide occurred and really up and down areas like Capo Beach, just down from here, and all the way on up to Dana Point. We know when Dana Point Harbor was constructed, roughly 50, 60 years ago, that a lot of sand was dredged at that time. 2 million cubic yards of sand was dredged, and that lasted a remarkably long period of time, until about 2000. But we've seen this very steady erosion and degradation of our beaches since then. And so it's really important that we have this federal investment working with our great partners at the state level and at the local level. Two other announcements from this morning. One is for $53.8 million, and we still have this big check that will break out, and that's for a replacement of a bridge down in Del Mar. Now you say, well, why is that important for here? You're only as strong as your weakest link. And as it pertains to this rail corridor, our weakest links are here in San Clemente, where we've had closures in recent years, but also in Del Mar. And it impacts all of us. If the rail corridor is closed and it can't get from San Diego up to LA, it doesn't matter if it's in Del Mar, it doesn't matter if it's in San Clemente, we have to make sure that we address it regionally. So $53.8 million to replace a 108-year-old bridge down in Solana Beach called the San Dieguito Bridge. Very excited about that, and tremendous credit to Senator Blakespear, who you'll hear from. The other, which doesn't have the dollar amount, but I would argue in the long run will be more significant. We'll look back 10 or 20 years and we'll recognize it as the more significant of the two announcements that we were planning to make up at Union Station in LA, by the way, with some of our friends up there, is in the bipartisan infrastructure law, there is a new program called the Corridor ID program. And that is the Department of Transportation's way of defining the most strategically important rail corridors across the United States that need long-term investment. As you know, we need, over time, billions of dollars in investment in this rail corridor. And there are many differing opinions. A lot of people are very exuberant and spirited in those opinions of where the tracks should go. But wherever they go or wherever they stay, we're going to need major investments for stabilization. And that's where being part of the Corridor ID program unlocks that once-in-a-generation opportunity to get far more funding through the bipartisan infrastructure law. So I'll leave it there for now, and I'll introduce a few people. The first is just a tremendous state senator representing this community. I was so honored and proud to work with her when she was mayor as well, and that's Catherine Blakespear. Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Levin. I'm so excited to be here today with all of the important leaders that you see behind me who you'll hear from. I'm Senator Catherine Blakespear, and I represent the 38th Senate District, which includes large sections of the 350 miles that goes from San Luis Obispo all the way down to San Diego County. I previously served as the chair of the Transportation Agency in San Diego County, SANDAG, and also the mayor of the city of Encinitas, which also had the rail corridor in it. And one of the first things that I did when I became a state senator last year representing this part of Orange County was to form a subcommittee on the corridor itself, the Low San Rail Corridor. And we've had 3 hearings, and the focus of it really is to center the passenger in making decisions about this rail corridor. So we know that when we have the problems like we had yesterday at 4:26 p.m., that there are thousands of passengers that are affected by that. We ourselves, this delegation was affected by that. We were scheduled today to be meeting several sections along this rail corridor, including at LA Union Station, and we canceled that. It was going to be a group of thought leaders and elected officials talking about transportation planning, and we're not able to do it because of the fact that we can't take the train there and it no longer works. So when you think about the fact that there are thousands of people trying to get to their work, they're trying to do their recreation, the reasons that people travel, all the things to run your own life, we know that we have a serious problem. So what do we do about that? What we need to do is we need to align our goals and our incentives and our deliverables from the multiple different agencies that own and operate this corridor. And starting with this section in San Clemente, with the debris that's fallen onto the tracks, we have had several months, more months this section was closed last year than it was open. And right now there are 30 trains, more than 30 trains, Metrolink and Amtrak trains that are not running at this very minute. And when you think about the impact on lives, we need the same urgency we have around roads. We need to apply that to train travel and say it's critically important we get this open as soon as possible, and we also want to make sure that we are thinking about the next steps. Where are we going to move the rail corridor through this area so that it can continue to be resilient? Because we just can't have this happen. We can't have it be going down every several weeks or months and think that we're going to have actual transit that serves people's needs. So I'm tremendously grateful that our Congressman Mike Levin has prioritized this over his years in Congress from his very first day. This corridor has been top of mind for him, and he's brought a lot of money and resources to it. And also Supervisor Foley and the other leaders behind me talk about this They articulate the value of it. City Council member Chris Duncan is also going to be speaking, and he has a lot of commitment to this and has demonstrated that too through his leadership, and all of the elected officials. So making sure that we're working with one voice and putting money and putting will behind this is really important. So with that, I want to turn it over to Katrina Foley.
Hold on one second. Thank you. Thank you so much, Catherine, for all of your leadership. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Pete Buttigieg. We had Secretary Buttigieg out last year, and we took him along the corridor, and he saw how precarious a situation it is, and he made a commitment to me that he would deliver at the federal level, and they have. I really am grateful to the Department of Transportation. The other thing I will tell you is that the Army Corps of Engineers and the sand, in addition to the funding is important. That $30 million for Encinitas, Solana Beach, the $9 million for here in San Clemente. But I would argue more important is the 50-year commitment from the Army Corps of Engineers, where it's not that money from the $30 million and the $9 million will get us maybe 5 or 6 years worth of sand, but it's that 50-year commitment. It's that long-term thinking that we really need. So with that, I want to introduce Donna Cleary. From Assemblymember Lori Davies' office. We're grateful that these issues around sand and stabilization, they are nonpartisan issues. We all love this beach. We all love this community. Donna.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to relay that Assemblymember Davies and Senator Janet Wynn are on a plane. They'll be down here visiting this location in a little bit, probably early this afternoon. They are very much committed to seeing everything resolved on these tracks as soon as possible. They've been in communication with OCTA, which assures them that this should be done in a day, maybe 2, that the rail would be back open. So I just wanted to pass it on, and thank you very much.
I now want to introduce a great champion for Orange County, somebody that I've known for a long time, who is really just a tireless advocate for our local environment, and that's my dear friend, Supervisor Katrina Foley.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman. And I do want to echo, it is so critical that we not waste any time in, 1, clearing the debris, but 2, coming up with solutions, because I was elected in 2021 and joined the Orange County Transportation Authority then, and have been working on the sand replenishment issues, the railroad track closure issues, landslides, ever since then. It's decades of lack of attention to finding real solutions to what is, I think, evident from the past decade, that the coast is eroding, that sea level is rising, that the storms that we are experiencing are saturating a very sandy, shallow hillside that will continue to happen. I was talking to the congressman earlier about how we at OCTA are investing in studies to look at the geological impacts, but it's not enough. We need to study the entirety of the bluff. We need to make sure it doesn't matter whether it's private property or public property, but we study and we see where are the risk areas. What area is going to come down next? And we get ahead of that, because as Senator Blakespear indicated, we can't keep stopping the transportation needs and impacting residents, impacting commerce, impacting our national security issues with regard to trains that need to go to Camp Pendleton. This is a critical corridor, and the investment that we are finally seeing by the congressman's efforts and the research and the study and the solution finding, problem solving by Senator Blakespear and her team, we're so grateful for it. And now that I sit on the low sand corridor, just got appointed at the last board meeting, this is a priority that we will work together and find solutions, because it's just not sustainable the way it is now. So we're grateful, we're investing, we're partnering with the cities, we're partnering with the congressman and the state senator, and we will work on this tirelessly because we cannot keep shutting down the railroad tracks. I'll tell you one story. This morning I was out on the point in time count and we were addressing homelessness. And we were getting calls from the station at Laguna Niguel, Mission Viejo. There was a woman there who was Spanish speaking, and she had ridden the train from Riverside. And she landed at the Laguna Niguel, Mission Viejo station, and she was trying to get to Vista. She didn't know the trains had been closed down, and she was stuck. She was stuck in Laguna Niguel. She couldn't get to Vista. We were trying to find her transportation. She ended up taking a bus from Laguna Niguel to Santa Ana so that she could then get on the other train to get to Vista. So we cannot do that to residents who are depending on the rail system for work, for school, for community, and for business. So thank you, Congressman. We appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, Katrina. Thank you. One other thing I will mention is that in this year's budget, and I need to go back to Washington and work with my colleagues to actually pass a budget, not just a continuing resolution, but in that budget is actually $3.5 million for OCTA to have a long-term study of this rail corridor. So in addition to all the great work that they are doing, that you know, every day it seems like there's a new Band-Aid that they need to put on, where, you know, we're just looking at Casa Romantica right there, and that was around $8 million, and we're going to need more help here in the coming days and weeks to make sure this stays open. But every time is a reminder that we have to be thinking long-term about long-term stability. When I got into Congress in 2019, I was very grateful to work with Chris Duncan, who was the mayor and has been a dedicated leader here in the city of San Clemente. And we have had many conversations about these challenges along the Low Sand Corridor, and he was there when we signed the agreement here in San Clemente with the Army Corps, and has been just a terrific partner. So we'll hear from Chris, and we'll also hear from Councilmember Loeffler. Chris, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it, and thanks everybody for coming here to San Clemente today. I wish it was better news, but we're back here for another landslide, unfortunately. You know, what's in my mind is our residents, many of whom have actually come by as we've been doing this press conference on our beautiful beach trail here, because behind us, our Mariposa Bridge, which is the key connector of the beach trail from North Beach to this location at Linda Lane Park, has been damaged terribly by this latest landslide. In fact, it's been knocked off its support structures, right? So that's why the trail is down, and that's why the rail is down too, right? So I'm concerned about our residents. They enjoy the beach trail. It's an essential feature of this beautiful city that we get to walk by and exercise and enjoy that area. So I can tell you that city staff was out there last night with MetroLink, and I want to give credit to city staff for being on the job immediately. And I'm grateful that all our partners are here, because we're going to need to work together to get the trail open, to get the rail open. And I can tell you on behalf of the San Clemente City Council, we're going to do absolutely everything in our power to make that happen for our residents and all of the residents of South Orange County. So again, thank you for coming. Again, wish it was under better circumstances, but we're going to get this thing done for our residents. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult than Casa Romantica behind us, but no challenge too big when we all step in together and work together to make it happen. So that's gonna be what's in our future, and we're going to be working probably every hour we can in the next few days to get that bridge removed from that area, to get the debris off the tracks, and eventually get the trail open. With that, I'd like to offer up Councilmember Rick Loeffler from San Clemente City Council, if he wants to say a few words too.
I'll just echo everything that Chris just said. It's really impressive to see city, county, state, and federal officials come together and so much support. They've had a lot of practice in the last few months doing that. So welcome to San Clemente once again. Hopefully we won't be doing that this soon, but if we are, we will get that support. I want to also thank Orange County Transit Authority, another partner in this. You'll see later on today they're planning on coming in and actually dismantling the bridge. They're going to bring in a flat car, rail truck, or rail car, remove the bridge, start grooming the slope, and so hopefully within the next couple of days we'll have the actual trains running again. So it's been a great partnership. Everybody comes together, and again, a lot of practice on this. So we get better at it every time. So again, thank you for all the partners and stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. Also want to thank representative from Senator Wynn's office for being here. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce my friend Aaron McCall from California Environmental Voters to say a few words. Aaron.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron McCall. I'm from California Environmental Voters. And California Environmental Voters is an organization that believes that we do have solutions to the climate crisis. We just need political courage and political will. The leaders standing behind me have been showing their courage by fighting tirelessly to get funding and resources to address this corridor. Yesterday, we were actually going to do a journey from the bottom of San Diego all the way up to Los Angeles to talk about the over $53 million, which Congressman Mike Levin had secured, to address this corridor and talk about the needs for more. And then we had an extreme weather event, which shut down the rail. I'm here to tell you that these extreme weather events are going to become more consistent and more part of our everyday lives. Because while 2030 is the deadline that many scientists talk about, we are currently in the midst of the climate crisis now. With extreme weather from fire season going further, rain happening every year that's causing damages to our infrastructure, we need also to prioritize the sustainability of these things. The Gavin Newsom administration and the Joe Biden administration must make sure that they are prioritizing our public transportation. As we know, transportation contributes to the largest 2 greenhouse gas emissions. And if we're able to prioritize making sure that we have resilient public transportation, it not only helps our community, it helps our businesses, but also it's going to mean a better, more sustainable, consistent future where we don't have these sorts of breakdowns. The money is a lot, but it is worth it because it's only going to cost more if we do not make these investments now. It's urgent that if you guys are watching at home, to urge your leaders, thank your leaders who are fighting for you, and urge the others to join them and invest in better public transportation, resiliency, and climate resiliency. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Aaron. I'd now like to present Katrina Foley in her capacity as a board member for the Lausanne Agency with a check for over $53.8 million for stabilization efforts for the Lausanne corridor. So the big check. Thank you. Everybody get that? Okay. Thank you. Yes. We'll be happy to take some questions, and I would just say that's a down payment. You know, we're going to need to add a 0 or 2 for the next 10, 20, 30 years for this corridor. But being part of that corridor ID program with the Department of Transportation is critically important as well towards that end. Questions? Yes.
From any one of you about the roadmap going forward with regard to the Mariposa Bridge and getting this rail line open. Can you walk us through, starting this afternoon, what is going to happen, please?
Well, a lot of the work is, it's in the purview of Metrolink, right, who operates the rail there. But what our understanding is, and Rick might be able to provide a few more details, is they are going to bring in a flatbed on the rail with, I believe, a crane setup that's going to be able to lift these damaged sections of the bridge out and remove them. They're going to cut them up into pieces and dispose of them somewhere. They're going to move the section of the bridge that's hanging, frankly, precariously over the tracks right now, and an adjacent section that's also been bent and damaged by the landslide. Now that's going to cause more of the hillside to come down onto the tracks, right? So they'll have to redouble their efforts to then clear the tracks, including clearing the tracks of these concrete structures that were moved as well, 1,000 pounds each, moved by the power of the landslide. So that's in the next few days, hopefully, best case scenario, so that they can get the rail line open within a few days. But that's going to be work done by Metrolink, and the city's going to be there working hand in hand with Metrolink and adding whatever we can through our equipment and manpower and otherwise. The trail itself, longer term project, right? Because this bridge is going to need to be rebuilt. I'm glad that we took the bridge money, by the way, City Manager Annie Hall. Thanks for helping us with that, and we devoted that to Casa Romanica because we would have built a brand new bridge here that would have got destroyed by this landslide. So this bridge needed to be replaced anyway. A slight little tiny silver lining there. But yeah, we're going to be taking out all of those pieces, or Metrolink is, and we're working with them, and then they hope to get that rail line open within a few days. Again, best case scenario.
And what are geologists saying about this one? What do you have any information from the experts?
Last night, when I was on site with some city staff, the Metrolink geologists were saying, in fact, there is more movement to be had there. There's a huge pinnacle of dirt that's sort of looming over the bridge on the eastern or hillside side of the bridge. That is probably going to move too, right? So we have more movement that's going to happen. We have rains next weekend. We can expect more movement, right? And so they're saying this is a very unstable and dangerous area. In fact, they didn't want anybody near any of those sections of the bridge. So it's going to be the experts that come in here to remove those sections. We won't be able to get people in there until that's done, but you can expect more movement in the future. Just as a point, I think we need to be more proactive in the future, right? And I'm glad everybody's here because we're going to need the funding, and we're going to need a check like that, Mike, for us, I think, because we need to be more proactive. And I was talking with Supervisor Foley about this. It was really her idea that, hey, let's take some steps now to find hotspots so that we might be able to take steps ahead of time and not play cleanup or defense after the fact. So I think that's something that we'd like to see more in the future here in San Clemente.
You mentioned from OCTA's perspective, can you comment, please? Thanks, Chris.
Sure. So OCTA is, we have already invested in doing this short-term study. And I'll tell you, I've already spoken to the CEO about moving with more urgency to do a further evaluation of the entire slope here that's all along the corridor, because we can't just measure the areas where we've already seen landslide. We have to be proactive in finding out where do we have risk and shore up those areas so that we don't have these reactionary responses, because it's a lot more expensive to react. We keep investing millions and millions of dollars reacting instead of proactive planning to prevent. So that's what my effort is going to be over the next year as it relates to this short-term study. The study, they're calling it a study, but it's really to find what are some interim solutions. How do we get more sand on the beaches to protect against the coastal erosion? How do we shore up the hillside to prevent the landslide from impacting the rail corridor? So we have to look at it from both sides of the rail to be able to, protect against what is literally Mother Nature taking over. Yes.
One, someone mentioned that this would be a bigger lift than the Casa Romantica incident. So can someone put that into perspective on how these two incidents differ? And two, when it comes to state funding, what is currently available to address some of these issues, and what exactly is needed, whether it's funding or support specifically?
So I'm going to let Mr. Duncan address the issue with regard to the heavier lift, but I'll tell you why, from OCTA standpoint, that it's a little bit heavier lift. We invested the $3 million for the wall that we were able to build at the bottom of Casa Romantica. Now, all we were doing was securing dirt and debris from coming down onto the tracks. But we have a big metal heavy bridge that's embedded into the hillside over here, and that bridge, when we start to take it down, could cause the hillside to become more unstable. I'm not an engineer, but common sense tells us that when you take a giant piece of infrastructure out of a mountainside, it's probably going to create some instability. So that's the heavier lift there. And so we'll see what happens. I don't want anyone here to think that this is going to happen in a day or two. That is not what I've been told by our Orange County Transportation CEO. We don't know. It is uncertain how long this will take. It'll all depend on what happens when they start moving that bridge. Did you want to?
Do you mind if I say
Please,
Yeah.
please.
So, thank you. So to the question about what is the state's involvement or commitment, I think one of the things that we're really committed to at the state level is looking at this corridor as 350 miles that needs to function as a whole. So people are going across county boundaries or going across city boundaries on the train, and what we want to have is long-term planning. So we're very happy that San Clemente and OCTA are interested in saying, looking at the bluffs and saying, where might we be able to predict a future debris slide? But we're looking really at saying, what's the resiliency of this corridor in 50 years and 100 years? And with sea level rise and bluff erosion, we know that there are sections that need to move. And in San Diego County, there's been a dedicated effort, which is not always unanimous, of course, but a dedicated effort to say this section of the bluffs, this section of the tracks along the bluffs in Del Mar needs to move into a tunnel. So we're looking for a commitment and urgent long-term, medium and long-term planning to be able to invest in that, because ultimately having the corridor run and operate and be resilient, and it is the goal. So there are lots of short-term fixes that are, as the supervisor said, very expensive and also very reactive. So of course the track is closed before you fix the problem. And meanwhile, passengers are heavily affected. But if we could be looking at that longer timeline and getting behind that and articulating the value of it and owning the reality that we're not going to be able to continue to have a rail line along many sections of mile right at grade with the ocean when the ocean is crashing over the tracks, I think reckoning with that reality is a really important part of this. And so that's certainly a goal from the state level.
Is there anything working its way through the legislature as far as proposals, and how much funding are you looking for? State?
Well, I mean, just to be clear, the state already funds all of this. So the state money is already going to run the Amtrak service, going to the different transit agencies all throughout the state. And so the way that the funding works is that decisions are made locally. So OCTA and the Lausanne corridor are making decisions about how they're allocating their funding. And what we see is that, unfortunately, when we have to invest in things like bus bridges to take people from Irvine to Oceanside an hour on a bus, that it results in these other unfortunate consequences like closing of ticket offices in different transit areas because there's a limited pot of money. So the state and the federal government, I think, we all want to be a great partner, but we have to be aligned with our goals. So what I'm focused on as the chair of this subcommittee that is looking at this rail corridor is to say, how can we align those goals? How can we have all agencies working toward those same goals with specific deliverables? And the money will be part of that.
I would just add that specifically in response to the need for long-term planning, we worked with OCTA and were able to secure $3.5 million on a bipartisan basis, which is in the budget. Now we just have to pass the budget, which we're going to do. We can't keep having continuing resolutions and punting. We have to have an annual budget, and once we do, in addition to so many other important priorities for our district and region, there is $3.5 million in there for OCTA to conduct their long-term study.
Do you envision this area also moving inland, and does this and the recent landslide expedite that urgency?
My intent is for OCTA to use the federal funding along with the state and local funding to engage a stakeholder dialogue. I don't pretend to have the answer on stabilization or relocation. I know that anything that happens is going to cost money. To keep the tracks where they are currently is going to cost significant federal, state, and local resources in the years ahead. And the reality is the best thing that we can do is sand on the beach, because sand helps protect that corridor. It helps protect our region, our bluffs, our coastal economy. So that's got to be a top priority. And stabilization efforts every single year. We've had to put very expensive Band-Aids on the rail corridor for some time. When I first took office, it wasn't San Clemente that was creating the shutdowns every year, it was Del Mar. So we invested, and we were able to work with our partners to get tens of millions of dollars in federal funding in years 19, 20, and 21 for Del Mar. We've seen in the last year or so with what happened at Cotton's Point and what happened here at Casa Romantica, what happened here behind me, Mariposa, and we know that Mother Nature always wins. Mother Nature always wins. So we've got to be thinking, again, to Catherine's point, we've got to be thinking long term. Sir, did you have something else you wanted to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
hold on one
sorry.
sec, sir.
I just
Hold on
wanted to
one
close out because I wanted to close out the point on the complexity. I think Supervisor Foley had it right, but there's three reasons why this is more complex. One, on Casa Romantica, it was city-owned, so the city could get in there and do the project on our own. In this case, the landslide is coming from private property, which we have no control over. The second one is the slope is more severe. It's almost straight down. So the landslide is going to be more powerful, and there's less room to operate to build some kind of wall or structure to keep it out. And the third one, as Supervisor Foley mentioned, is that bridge, right? We didn't have the bridge looming over the tracks. Here we have this huge metal bridge that, if not taken away, could fall down and severely damage the railroad tracks. So those are the three big differences.
Where is the gentleman? Had a question. Yes, sir.
38 years, and I realize it's not as much sand as it once was. However, am I the only one that can remember we paid $600,000 to dump some sand at North Beach, and it was gone in a couple of months? So I don't know why you would suspect that dumping more sand in your area is going to stay there when it didn't stay up there.
Well, it won't necessarily stay there, but what it will do is, and I'm not an expert on this, but I know experts on this. One is Professor Brett Sanders at UCI, who I'd love to have down here. I know a number of you, and Katrina has engaged with him a lot. What you want is for that natural littoral cell to be created. So what you want is to have enough sand to provide a steady amount, and then create a natural littoral cell from basically south of here down to Cypress Shores, all the way up to Dana Point Harbor. As I mentioned, 1960s, early 70s, 2 million cubic yards of sand actually were dredged to compensate for the creation of Dana Point Harbor. That over time actually did a great deal to keep wider sandy beach. And then around 2000 is when the effects of that dredging that had been done during the creation of the harbor basically declined, and then now we're in a situation where we see a very significant and rapid erosion. And so the idea here, and I'm not a geotechnical expert, nor am I an engineer, nor do you want me dredging. I can help get the money. We need the Army Corps to go actually do the dredging. But that's the basic idea here. So it does work, and we can make sure, sir, if we can get your information, we could connect you with Professor Sanders, and he can explain it on a technical level.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. Please, Katrina.
Yeah. So as the Congressman knows, the Army Corps, through his efforts, is going to put sand here every 5 years.
Yep.
So it's all about maintenance and consistency, and treating the beaches much like you might treat a road being repaired. You have to have a regularly scheduled plan, and you have to be consistent because you want to build up the sand. The county is embarking on our South Coast resiliency planning, and we have a study that we've done over the last year, and we're going to be announcing some of our results here soon. We also are working to take some of the sand out of our flood channels and deposit it here, so that we supplement the work that the Congressman is doing with the Army Corps every year, as opposed to waiting just for the 5-year plan. It's a constant replenishment and nourishment of the sand. We also, due to the Congressman's efforts, are going to help with the jetty at Dana Point Harbor and taking some of that sand that we removed from there, putting that on our beaches as well. So sand nourishment, sand replenishment is a big priority for the county, for the Congressman. We have a lot more planning going on than we ever have, and Professor Sanders is actually heading up my climate resiliency task force. We have our first meeting on February 1st.
Thank you, sir. It's a great question. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I have a question with regard to the pumping station right behind here. Just that, I think we can all see the imminent reaction that's going to be happening here with the sliding. Are there any plans to relocate or do anything here with the pumping station?
Yeah, that's a great question. About 8 years ago, we had the major slide here. As we see, it's gotten worse over time. We were just talking about that, the Congressman and Supervisor Foley, right before we started this conference. And you can see that there's some bracing, the rudimentary bracing there that protects that pumping station. Critical pumping station, by the way. Yeah, we are studying the pumping station and looking at our options to potentially relocate. If we're not able to relocate, provide some support structure there. So we're trying to get ahead of the game at the city level and make sure that we're not reactionary in that case. But that's a great observation. Yeah, this behind us is bad, and it's getting worse over time. Thank you.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice. All right.